Let's get into the culture, all right? So
Sure.
you've been a member of the entertainment industry long enough to witness our evolution. And, you know, and when I talk about the entertainment industry, I'm specifically talking about the black entertainment industry. So rap, hip hop, R&B, soul, jazz, et cetera, et cetera. So you've watched it become what it is today. Give us a behind the scenes and let us know what's going on as these new names come onto the scene, new labels come onto the scene, new companies come onto the scene. Is this engineered? Is it a market-driven, competition-driven kind of rise to the top where the cream rises to the top? Or are certain people plucked out of the crowd and made into the hot thing today?
Wow, this is going to be longer than an hour. So I hope you got time. Let me try to break this down. To answer your question, it is not consumer driven. It never has been consumer driven. I don't like conspiracy theories. I do like conspiracy facts. And everything I'm saying is factual. So when I tell you something, I can tell you, you're talking to somebody who's been to Billboard, who's got Southern Entertainment Awards, who's got R&R Executive Producer of the Year Awards, who has seen everything there is to see from the time he was 9 years old until he was 34. And even then, I still, even though I'm retired from radio, I have not left the industry.
That's
you know,
right.
I still got to go into these radio stations, and I go in there and I'm welcomed with open arms.
Yeah, we saw that. We saw that. We saw your interview with the Breakfast Club. Dope interview, by the way.
So, thank you very much. I hated it.
You seem like you were back at home. I mean, you were.
I was, and I loved being there. Charlamagne is one of my best friends. When I had nobody, Charlamagne still took my phone calls. Charlamagne still put money in my account. Charlamagne took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. So that's not what I mean. When I say I hated it, I felt like there were certain things that I should have said. I felt like there were things that I could have done better in taking advantage of such a massive platform, even though I did well, and I'm thankful for the interview. I'm always my worst critic, but let me answer your question. When it comes to the industry, let me make this clear. There is no such thing as the black entertainment industry because black people control nothing. Nothing.
Go in.
Zero. Zilch. Nada. Bupkis. Whore. Nothing. Now, let me elaborate because I just finished telling you about Cathy Hughes, and this is no diss to Cathy Hughes, nor is it a diss to Radio 1. But when you look at the corporate infrastructure of that company, and all of this is Googleable. Now, you have people in Atlanta like Hurricane Dave who runs his cluster, and he's black. Colby Kolb, the vice president of Radio 1, he's black. But the people that I'm naming who are black are not owners, and those who do own aren't hands-on. So that goes for Cathy and her son, Alfred.
That's right.
Now, Miss Hughes is still Miss Hughes, and Miss Hughes gets all the respect in the world. Miss Hughes just had the Howard University Communications School program named after her, where my daughter will be attending this fall. So when I say what I say, I'm saying with the utmost deference and respect for a woman who has taught me, both directly and indirectly, what it means to have this microphone. But facts are facts. And so there's that. Now let's go beyond Radio 1 because I'm not attacking Radio 1 at all. I love Radio 1 and I believe in what it stands for. But let's go deeper. Let's go to Clear Channel, which you now know as iHeart. You're welcome.
Hold on. What do you mean you're welcome? What do you mean when you say you're welcome?
Okay. When I worked there, I became the first director of social media for the company. Black or white. Director. There were urban social networking managers. There were white social networking managers, and I hate the word urban, and I hate when black people subscribe that word because it's a word that was supposed to cover up the fact that it's black, because it used to be black radio, then they made it into urban radio in order to sell that, and then when advertisers got hip, they changed that to rhythmic, when they take hip-hop and then put white jocks in front of it, but that's a whole nother hour conversation. But you asked this question, so I'm going to give you the answer you deserve. So there would be things that I would suggest, because they would say, I would sit in a room, and there'd be black women in the room, and then the white managers would say things like, hey, they called me Taz at the time. They say, Taz, we're going to have an ass brackets contest. I said, you're going to have a what? Well, we're going to do ass brackets. I was like, explain that. Well, you know how like March Madness has the brackets? Well, we're going to have women, they're going to send in shots of their asses. We're going to pick out the best, and it's going to get so many unique views and this, that, and the third. I was like, are you crazy? And I'm sitting there, I'm looking for one of these black women to say something. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is the bricks that were being thrown. And I'm like, y'all just gonna sit here and I'm looking at them like, you know how you give somebody a look, but you're not saying it, but your face is saying it?
Right.
Like, aren't you gonna stand up for your sisters? But see, sometimes when you're scared to lose a job because it's a cushy job and it's a fun job that so you can sit around at Fridays and brag about with your friends, you don't want to rock the boat. I'm a habitual line stepper. Shout to Charlie Murphy. God rest his. I'm a habitual line stepper. So I do what is right. I don't care who gets hurt. I care about the truth. And I said, the majority of people who listen to you, what's called a P1 listener, are black women between the ages of 18 and 34. The majority of them, the median, is 27, and they're single moms. So why don't we do a sexy single moms contest? We get 4 or 5 advertisers, somebody to do, spa day, somebody to do, hair and makeup, somebody to give them a limo, somebody to give them a fancy dinner. So now you've made $250,000 off of one promotion, and nobody's asses were shown. So you not only get respect, but you make more money than the initial promotion was going to have. That was the last time I was invited to that meeting, but they took the idea and they ran with it, and they still run with it. iHeartRadio was an app that was just an app. I was like, listen, what we need to do is, you know how McDonald's has an integrated product suite? McFlurries, McDoubles.
Absolutely.
Big Macs. So we need to have iHeart everything. Because when you think Clear Channel, you think billboards. You don't think radio. And I'm like, y'all have an iHeart Radio theater, but that's as far as y'all go with it. Y'all need to expand that thing. We paying Katy Perry $100,000 to do Jingle Ball in Philly, $100,000 to do Jingle Ball in New York. Yo, we need to pay her one flat fee, have her do all the shows, and then do an award show. Oh, that's crazy. That'll never work. No, these people won't come together. And why would anybody get an award from us? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, Dick Clark started an award show called the American Music Awards. Dick Clark is dead. The show's still going on. And they laughed at me and told me I was crazy. And then amazingly, that Christmas, I was fired, and that's when I retired. And they were in the process of running the iHeartRadio Awards. The company became iHeartMedia after I left. Those are facts. There are people who have witnessed it, but I won't get credit for that, and that's fine. Because here's the thing, right? You can take an idea. I got another one. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm cool. I'm like Lewis Latimer. You don't have to give me credit for inventing the light bulb. We know Edison failed 1,000 times till he got Latimer.
That's right. See, that's why we wanted you on the show. We didn't want to talk to the people who were talking about the people behind the scenes. I wanted to talk to the people who were the influencers, right? I don't want to talk to Rickey Smiley. I want to talk to the man who brought us Rickey Smiley. I don't want to talk to the person who heard about the person or the person writing a book about a person. I want to talk to the person. Speaking of Rickey Smiley, now, I know we don't have, all data to hold you hostage, but
you good all the time you need.
So tell us what happened with that. Tell us how you went about that process, and tell us some of the backstory that we might not know.
I'm at K104. Now, K104 was a place where Tom Joyner came from, Skip Cheatham, KK Holiday. You had a lot of heavy hitters coming out of K104. And, at that point, they were, people making $1 million salaries. I came when they said, we ain't paying nobody $1 million. So I was mad because I had plans with my K104 money. I was going to buy me a gas station, McDonald's, whatever. And so I bumped heads with the program director who told me I was inconsistent, but he was off, doing interviews and whatnot. And he would put me in his time slot and my numbers came back better than his, but he said I was inconsistent. And I said, so you the coach, right? He says, yeah. I said, well, if you the coach, why, and I'm an inconsistent player, why would you put your most inconsistent player in your slot while you were gone? Because I knew what it really was. But, it is what it is. But you young, you take that L, whatever. So I called Doug Banks. Peep game. I called Doug Banks. And Doug Banks says, listen, you can go over to Radio 1. I done talked to some people over there. Go bring them your tape.
Now, who is Doug Banks? Who is Doug Banks?
Doug Banks is a radio icon. Doug Banks and Dee Dee McGuire held Chicago in a grip of an iron fist for years. Doug Banks worked hand in hand with Tom Joyner at WGCI in Chicago when Tom Joyner was the fly jock, going back and forth, doing mornings at K104 and afternoons at GCI.
That's right.
So Doug Banks is a legend. God rest his soul. But Doug Banks put his neck on the line to get me that job at Radio 1. So I get the job, and they make me like an assistant production director. So I'm in a production room, and they're giving me like $15 an hour, but I could work as many hours as I needed to get the job done. So I was making 65 by the time it was all said and done. So I'm in there, and I go to the program director. His name was John Candy, and I say, John, like, what I'm capable of. He said, do you think I really brought you in here to be a production guy? I said, well, why'd you bring me here? He said, well, I know what you did over at K104, and I know what you did for that morning show. We're trying to beat that morning show. I said, well, you got Rickey Smiley. He was like, Rickey, I said, I met him. I opened for him once. He was like, well, I'm going to ease you in there, and I want you to start building a relationship with Rickey. So I start talking to Rickey. We go back and forth. I get to know the rest of the morning show, and there was a best of show, and I said, Rickey, I need you to come to the studio, and I started having him record breaks, and he didn't know what he was doing. He was just reading what I asked him to read. Then they left, and I'm chopping the stuff up. I'm taking bits, and I'm doing a best of show as if it's live. You know, and so people in the company begin to hear about this, and then the producer at the time, who's now their producer again, but that's a whole nother hour show. The producer at the time, he was flying back and forth to Atlanta, not really handling his business, and then here I come, and people began to realize that, yo, this Taz kid's doing a lot of work. Let's make some changes. Especially because he knew what was going on that morning show across the street. Now we can use that information to beat that morning show. So when the dust settled and the smoke cleared, what I didn't know is that Ricky had a conversation with Alfred, who's Kathy Hughes' son, and said, listen, if I beat K104, will you syndicate me? And Alfred said, yeah, sure, Ricky, go ahead and beat him. Because he didn't think it could be done. Because Steve Harvey got Ricky Smiley that job. See this connections? Do you see this connectivity?
This is the golden age of black radio, if you ask me.
Phenomenal. So he was like, all right, cool. So he was like, you think we can beat him? I said, yeah, you can beat him. Do this, do that, do that, do this. They're going to do this at this time. They're going to do that at that time. They're going to do this, that, and the third. Because by the time they realized that that's where I had gone, because I wasn't on the air. By the time they realized that the blueprint had gotten out, it was too late. So we beat him. So now Ricky go back to Alfred. He's like, yo, what's up? We beat him. Syndication was like, all right, well, do it again. It could have been a fluke. So we did it again. So now it's like, now what? So they give us Augusta and they give us St. Louis. So we tear a new one in Augusta, we tear a new one in St. Louis, and now I have to build demos. I have to make some programming changes. I'm working with Hurricane Dave, who's now in Atlanta, but they brought him in to supervise because they didn't think a 28-year-old kid was capable of syndicating somebody. You know, the kid who worked with Wendy Williams and DJ Clue. He couldn't possibly. But okay, whatever. So
yeah, now hold. All this before the age of 30.
Yes.
Insane. Family, you're listening to songs of wisdom and experience. This man knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. I'm sorry, I had to just jump in and emphasize the fact that you haven't even hit your 30th birthday at this point.
No.
And you already, making an impact on the national level. You've impacted a nation before the age of 30. Go ahead.
I didn't even look at it like that, but yeah, I guess you're right. Wow. you don't see you like other people see you, so God bless you for that.
True indeed.
So I'm like, okay, y'all gonna play the ages card, that's fine. So they bring in Hurricane Dave, and they tell Hurricane Dave, oh, well, you need to fire him. He's not that good. He's too young. He don't know what he's doing, da-da-da-da. So I'm sitting at home in my apartment, lounging, and I get a call, and Hurricane Dave's like, you got 30 minutes to get down here. Now, the station's 45 minutes away, so I made it there in 15. I had a left foot. And so he begins to ask me all these questions, and he's drilling me. He's like, yo, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, you're wonderful. He was like, you just stay up under me, and I got you. And so that's what we did, man. And I started putting together demos, and, Ricky wanted to get Miami, and Ricky wanted to get Birmingham. He wanted to get all these markets. So by the time I was done with him and put together these demos and tightening up the show and listening to what these dumb consultants thought they knew and so on and so forth, we had 30 markets. But the ugly side of the business is, and this is why if you go back to the Breakfast Club interview, you'll hear me say, if Ricky knew what I knew, he'd be thanking me right now. Because this is what Ricky did not know. Ricky had gotten to a point where he was disgusted with management because management wasn't respecting him. Not Hurricane Dave, but people above him. And he would just take their checks and put them in the top drawer. So they call me in along with my agent, and all the muckety mucks sit me in my office and say, you got to get a hold of Ricky Smiley. Now, Ricky Smiley is my friend. Because at this point, we have developed a relationship. This is my friend. And they're like, well, that's your friend, right? I'm like, yeah. You care about your friend, right? Yeah. Well, if you don't get him together, you do realize that on January 5th, you'll come in here and it'll be D.L. Hughley and These Nuts, because the show is called Ricky Smiley and These Nuts. Or it'll be Rudy Rush and These Nuts. Think I'm playing. Because the rest of y'all, the Nuts and y'all are great. But we don't need him being a loose cannon. I said, so wait. You expect a 28-year-old kid to get together somebody that you can't get together, that you can't control with your paychecks? Because Ricky Smiley makes in a day, in one show, what you pay him in 2 weeks. So 40 grand every 2 weeks ain't nothing for Ricky. But you want a 28-year-old kid to control a grown-ass man who's got a microphone that you gave him carte blanche on. So this is what they do. So they said it's either that or, well, we're going to have to make some executive decisions. I said, all right, cool. So I got all this pressure on me because I got to deal with what the people who are writing my checks tell me to do, and then I got to take care of my friend. So I'm in a place where I'm being pulled in two directions. It's like a custody battle, and I'm the lonely little child trying to figure out I got to choose between mom and dad.
True indeed.
So they brought in consultants, and they had what's called perceptual studies, and they would give me notes, and they wanted me to give them to Ricky. So I'm sending them these notes, and I send them to him, and it was during a mix. So Ricky ain't doing nothing but sitting in Birmingham, doing the show via satellite, and he got upset because he thought I was shitting on him, and I wasn't. I was following orders trying to protect him from being replaced by D.L. Hughley or Rudy Rush.
That's right.
So he's like, yo, don't send me no more fucked up ass emails. Now, me and Ricky have had blow-ups before, and it's okay. When you're a producer, you take shit off of the talent. That's fine. That's just part of the job.
That's right. That's right.
And
the part of the job that people don't talk about. One of the least favorable parts of the job, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I said, Ricky, what fucked up emails are you speaking of? Now, nobody knows what the fuck is going on. So Ricky begins to start talking all this shit. And I said to him, see, because at that point, all decorum, all Temple University education, all that went out the window. I was Dave from Martin Luther King High School, and now I'm big enough to fight the bullies. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm a grown man now. I'm not the wormy kid with Coke bottle glasses that's got to worry about grades and perceptions. I'm a grown man who's got to feed himself, take care of himself, and I deserve my respect because of what I've done for you, my friend. The shit I'm taking for you, my friend. And I laid his ass out. I said, listen, you ain't gonna talk like that, when you come up here.
That's right.
So if you that froggy, come see me. I'll be right here.
That's right.
So now the whole room is quiet. I'm telling Headcrack, yo, go to break, put on some records, whatever. So Ricky decides he's so frustrated at this point. He's so angry because he got cussed back out because he started this and I finished it. I don't pick fights. I finish them. He got so upset, he clocked out for the rest of the day. He turned off his microphone, took his ball, went home, whatever. So they bring Hurricane Dave, and Hurricane Dave is trying to mediate the situation because now they've demanded that Ricky fly back to Dallas because you can't be in Birmingham. We need to have a face-to-face. We're going to handle this right now.
Yeah, that's how you do
it. So
every
time, and he did to me what he did to Claudia Jordan. He did to me what he did to Ebony Steele. He did to me what he did to the other 4 producers ahead of me and the other 5 producers after me. Which was, I got to be in a separate room from him. He don't want to talk about anything that don't have nothing to do with the show, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. Whatever you got to do, it's your show. I'm just here to try to facilitate. So Hurricane Dave would set up meetings, and then it would be for like 10 o'clock. At 9:45, Ricky running out the door. One time, Hurricane Dave had to catch him in the parking lot, and he still wouldn't speak to me. And they didn't know what they were going to do because now it's a powder keg.
That's right.
And I get a call from Hurricane Dave. He was like, yo. He was like, I was trying to reach you. I was like, yo, I was on the plane. What's up? I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, I can't even do this. And I'm like, do what? Like, what's the problem?
Right.
I gotta let you go.
Wow.
I was like, let me go for what? He was like, but you know why. And I said, yeah, I know why. And he still won't face me. And Ricky Smiley has not faced me man to man, eyeball to eyeball to this day. It was heartbreaking. And here's how this is when I got really scared. I called Rudy Rush. And if you don't know who Rudy Rush is, he was Doug Banks' co-host for a while. He was also a host of Showtime at the Apollo following Steve Harvey. So Rudy Rush has been in the comedy and radio game for quite some time. And I called Rudy Rush and I said, Rudy, do you know anything about possibly replacing Ricky? He said, well, I don't know about that, Taz. He said, but I did get a call from your bosses and they wanted to know how I got along with Ebony Steele. I was like, wow. So then I called some people I called Cedric the Entertainer's manager because I don't know D.L. Hughley. I called Cedric the Entertainer's manager to get a hold of Ced to ask DL if there was any truth to it. And DL told Cedric to tell Eric to tell me that, yeah, they called him.
So things were already in the works behind your back, in motion just that quick.
Right, while I'm trying to save my friend, who, by the way, kept his job and I lost mine.
That's right.
But, bro, I never sweat jobs. But in that particular situation, the thing was, and it's like if you've ever watched if you watch The Dark Knight, there's this scene where Harvey Dent says to Bruce Wayne, you will either live long enough to become the villain or you die the hero.
That's right. And
so I became the villain. But, I don't get points for yesterday's game. So I needed to go off.
Let me go ahead and write that down. If you see T-shirts with that saying on them, I'm just saying.
I just want my cut.
You don't get points
property.
That's right. cut this part out, Wes. I mess with you. You don't get points for yesterday's game. True indeed.
No, you don't. Of course.
Talk to us about what happened after you were fired.
Okay, so I don't like to dwell on this part, but it's relevant to the story. I was with somebody who was with me for the wrong reasons, and in order to break free of that, she took everything. My savings had dried up. And at that point, people were like, what do you mean you don't have a job? And at that point, my savings had gone. I made too much for unemployment, and nobody would hire me because all I had been doing from the time I was 9 years old, with very few exceptions, was radio. What do you do with that resume? So the only people that would hire me were salespeople. So at this point, I lost my 2,500 square foot apartment. One of my cars got repoed. I washed up in a Quick Trip gas station sink. And I got a job working as an appointment setter and a salesperson for credit card processors. And I did that until I saved up enough bread to make the trek home. I did that, and I slept in my brother's garage in Philly. I gotten an opportunity through some friends that when I was working on what you now know as Ricky Smiley for Real. The pilot or the predecessor to that show was a reality show we were going to do based upon the radio station and based upon the actual members of the cast. You can actually see that episode on my YouTube channel, so you know I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. And if it looks real familiar, you'll understand why. Yet another thing I'll never get credit for.
And we will definitely include a link to that in our show notes for the family listening. Everything that we talk about, there will be links in the show notes.
Yeah, because I believe in facts. That's why I don't have a long memory. I got people in my family suffering from Alzheimer's. I'd rather just tell the truth and let the evidence, sway you whichever way it's going to sway you. So,
right.
That situation built a relationship with a company that had a network, and they wanted to give me my own show so I could do like sketch comedy and sketch comedy with a conscience. That was my whole thing. Like, I wanted to do something, but I was so depressed and I was so all over the place that even though I was doing the show and I was doing bits and putting things together, I heard the voice of God say, leave that show, go to the dollar store. And I was like, what the you know what I'm saying? Because I don't have those types of experiences. I'm hearing this. I'm like, the fuck? No. Right. No. So I go to the dollar store. I'm obedient. So I go to the dollar store. And I'm like, well, what am I looking for? And it says, grab those composition books and grab some pens and go home. And home was my brother's garage. So I'm in my brother's garage and I'm like, what am I doing with this? And the voice in my head that I was ascribed to being God said, write. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to write? And God was like, you hold the pen, I'll write. And that's where Common Sense Ain't Common came from. God took the experiences that I had and used my hand to the point where my hand was moving so fast, I developed a mild case of carpal tunnel. So I had to go out to Best Buy and get Dragon Naturally Speaking software. And that's how I do most of my books. So when you read my books and they sound conversationalist, because I spoke them. And, I wrote that book. And I developed I had started to put some things out. The BET Awards had happened. Michael Jackson had died. And I put out a blog on my Facebook called The Top 10 Reasons the BET Awards Made Me Want to Vomit. And I went to bed. Because I was just mad. I was watching it, and I'm blogging while I'm watching it. You got Zoe Saldana making fun of Nichelle Nichols, who, if it was no Nichelle Nichols, there would be no Zoe Saldana. So I had an issue with that. I had an issue with, just the tribute to Michael was piss poor. I was just mad. So I went to bed, and I woke up, and I'm like, and when I say bed, I mean I put the seat down in the truck. And I woke up, I had all these notifications. I had 5,000 friend requests. Somebody called me and was like, yo, you know that they quoted your blog in the LA Times. I was like, what the fuck are y'all talking?
Wow.
It's like, what? And I remember that I had taken that stuff and I said, okay, well, there may be an audience out here. So I started to take my YouTube a little bit more seriously. I jumped on the Blog Talk Radio. Now, I had been doing a podcast before. Whereas though I was doing what was called on-demand audio for a company called The Black World Today. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but they was like, it's the future. You put this thing up on this thing called a server, and people can download into this thing called an MP3 player. I'm like, whatever. How much does it pay? And they told me how much it paid. I signed on the dotted line. I never looked back. I'm like, y'all gonna sit up here and pay me to talk shit, and y'all gonna put it on the damn internet, whatever. And then once I got serious and understood started to understand the technology, and black people, y'all gotta stop waiting. Sam Jackson, if you look at that episode of the Boondocks where he talks about nigga technology, like, we gotta stop, just doing stuff because it's cute. We gotta start realizing that these things are tools, and tools can be weapons when used properly. So I would go and they would send me, because I was an emissary, for lack of a better term. I understood radio. So I go into these radio conventions and I tell them, look, we got this thing and it's this, that, and third. And people who you respect, who I will not name, said, oh, that's ridiculous. No one's going to do that. We're going to invest in satellite if we do anything outside of terrestrial radio. I was like, Well, we know how that turned out. Howard Stern was on the back end of that bad bet. You see what I'm saying?
Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, but being a visionary is priceless. People look at a pile of shit and see shit. I look at a pile of shit and see fertilizer. I got a call from Clear Channel, and they asked me to come in, and they, did their background checks and realized what I was and blah, blah, blah. And that's how I got that social media director position. But then, it's always politics, and when you're telling them not to do ass brackets, and you're saying, hey, listen, I just got engaged to the love of my life, and I'm going out to lunch for an hour because I have a lunch hour. I'm going to the Olive Garden. She worked around the corner at Comcast. I worked at Clear Channel. So we would meet at like Olive Garden or Chili's or some shit, and I would be back in 59 minutes and 59 seconds. And the perception was, oh, well, he's leaving out early. He ain't paying attention to his job. My job was spectacular. Like, I don't fuck around with work. Like, if you hire me to do a job, I'm going to do the job.
Let me throw in something that I always say to the family. The only thing that we come into this world with, in limited quantities, in variable quantities, is our time. Right? You may be born into a wealthy family. You may be born with certain physical attributes that were genetically passed on to you. But the only thing truly that we all have is time. The real tragedy of having to work for anyone is that they control the one thing that your creator gave you coming into this world with, your time. That's the real tragedy. But go ahead. I'm sorry, family.
Yeah. So that became a thing. And it's like, one time they told me, oh, well, you left at 4:30. I was like, yeah, because I was picking my fiance up. Oh, well, that's not fair. I said, so is it fair when I'm here at 4:30 in the morning? Y'all don't come in here and say, you can just come in at 9. But you want me for the half an hour when my white counterpart could leave her door open, act like she was still there. She going to the gym. She hanging out with the guy over at the news station. She kicking it with her buddies. And the numbers showed who was really working.
That's it.
No. That don't fly with me. So, that came to a screeching halt. And then I wound up, going right back into sales jobs because I said, I'm never going to work for somebody in that capacity ever again. So then I took an assload of sales jobs after my retirement. I did. I was stress eating so bad I ballooned up to 561 pounds.
Whew.
Yeah, I know. So my half-ton ass became the top salesperson in Nutrisystem. So I'm selling diet plans, and I'm fatter than the people I'm selling the diet plans to. And I'm talking like $1 million worth of diet plans.
See, for the listeners out there, this man is a fantastic salesman when he can be a half a ton and sell you a diet plan.
God bless you. That's your interpretation. I'll take it. But the thing of it is, man, you find your gifts on that road through hell. It's that old saying, if you're going through hell, keep going.
That's right.
I was endorsing products and selling shit to people that they didn't need since I was 9 years old, cracking a microphone. So I understand how people think. I understood how to speak in sound bites. I understood what things made people want to buy, what things turn people on, what things turn people off, what things provoke people, what things shock people. All those things that I was doing in order to entertain became weapons. Like I said, tools are weapons when used in the right hands.
That's right.
And that's why I realized that there's nothing that happens in this world that does not involve a sale, including sex. Even if you're not paying for sex, you're paying for sex.
Facts.
I'm sorry, my wife is smoking hot. I ain't gonna lie to you, but she gets her hair done. We pay for that wedding. We go on vacations. We spend time together. We have children. No. Same thing where, like, I mean, she cooks, she takes care of me, she supports me, she tells me when I'm going right, when I'm going wrong. You know what I mean? Like, there's always a transaction in everything that you do, in your friendships, in your job. But my whole thing is, we are taught to perform for others better than we perform for ourselves.
That's right.
This is the most important thing I'm going to do all day. I can close some deals. I can sell some. I can sell some courses, or I can continue writing this next book. But this is the most important thing that I'm going to do all day, because somebody's going to hear this and they're going to say, "Yo, okay, so it's not impossible. If a dumb fat schmuck with a mohawk and a ridiculously large beard can make it, then there's hope for me." So now it don't seem so ridiculous.
That's what this is about. This is about possibilities and probabilities. And in terms of probabilities, your journey through homelessness, your trial by fire is a probability for the family listening that wants to embark on this path. Sometimes it's voluntary, sometimes it's involuntary. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you might find yourself in antagonistic positions and circumstances. A great recession, you get fired from your job, your company folds, you meet that wrong person and end up getting duped. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you decide, I'm going to make this leap. When you make that decision, understand that you're going to have to go through the valley of the shadow of death, right? The family knows my story. I was homeless. I was sitting there building my empire as it is on the edge of an air mattress in a room that I was renting in a halfway house, right? And so this is a probability if you choose this path. The world isn't going to welcome your entrepreneurial ventures with open arms or your entrepreneurial spirit. In fact, I got more rejection from the people closest to me when I decided to do my own thing than I had ever gotten before. Because now it's, well, what are you doing? You're not making any money. You're not going to work, but you say that you're working. And you get all this backlash from the world around you because you've chosen to do things unconventionally, because you were not going to subject yourself to that level of control, disrespect, and humiliation that most people on the farm, on the plantation, subject themselves to. How you feel about that?
Forget my feelings. Let's talk facts. You have to understand, and this is a problem. And me and David Banner is one of my best friends. We talk about this whenever we get together. I've known David Banner for 13 years. He's never wavered either. David Banner, I remember coming to him one time. I was so frustrated. I was like, it's amazing how I can go and I can lecture at the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school, or I can go back to my alma mater, Temple, and lecture, or I can speak in front of an entire group of salespeople who don't look like me, and they'll respect me in my T-shirt and my sweats and my mohawk. But my own people won't have me. I have yet to give one lecture at one HBCU. When a computer gets a virus uploaded to it, even though it had a bunch of amazing information and capabilities and functions,
right.
When that virus gets in, do you blame the computer or do you blame the programmer who put that virus in the computer in the first place? I was like, you blame the programmer. He said people are programmed. And so I was like, wow, like, that makes sense. Now I understand. But
that's right.
We don't spend enough time understanding what has been done to us psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, physically, subconsciously. Let me take it to another level. What record companies do black people own? Go look at who owned record companies and what happened to them. So let's run it down, shall we? Motown Records. Barry Gordy sold it. So that company is now a label as opposed to it was a record company. The record company and the record label, while they may sound similar, they're different. The record label makes the records. The record company distributes the records.
All right.
Has the relationships, has the means of production. Let me go further.
There, means of production. Underline.
The point of it is means of production is everything. So let's go a little bit further. Let's go a little bit further.
Everything.
So let's go back to Interscope, which is where Death Row was. Okay. So now you have Shady, which is a division of Aftermath, which is on Interscope Records. Bad Boy, which was on Arista, it was on Def Jam, but it's now on Interscope Records. Who was in charge of Interscope Records when Death Row was beefing with Bad Boy? Jimmy Iovine. Who's in charge of Interscope Records now? Jimmy Iovine. Who made more money than Dr. Dre on that Beats by Dre deal? Jimmy Iovine. So if you look at any good detective show, whether it's the first 48 or whether it's Law and Order, when you want to find who it is, normally if it's a crime of passion, it's the husband or the spouse. Normally if it's a crime of somebody that seems random but isn't random, you follow the money.
And all the money leads back to a white man.
Bingo. Let's talk about Def Jam, Lyor Cohen. Everybody you think has somebody, you know, they have somebody who does not look like us. So that's why I said in the beginning of this conversation, go back and run it back if you like. I said there's no such thing as a black entertainment industry. Because the people who, because you asked me, are these people plucked from obscurity? No, they're selected. You trying to tell me that people got better verses than Talib Kweli? You trying to tell me that there's better production than David Banner? Really?
Absolutely not.
You trying to tell me Designer is more exciting than David Banner? If you play A-My, and I don't know if you've ever heard the song, but if you haven't, you need to go listen to it. A-My nigga. Why you call yourself that? A-My nigga. You're supposed to be a guy. That versus I am bars in Atlanta. Like all of a sudden, Mushmouth got a deal. There's no contest here, people. But there's a reason. Now, Banner, who's humble enough to say it's because I haven't had bigger hits, but Banner also got woke because when he went around the world, when Stunting is a Habit, Get Like Me was the #1 record in the world, he started seeing what was going on and how people viewed black people around the world. And the message was one of a caricature, and Banner could no longer sit back. Now, I can't speak for that man, but I can tell you what the man told me and what he said publicly. You know, so when you look at the means of production, you also have to look at who's really controlling this and why is it that Talib Kweli can go overseas and make money? Why is it that there are artists, be they R&B or hip hop, who all of a sudden are whack or have fallen off? You have to ask yourself, well, why does this happen? When the lion learns to write, then the hunter will no longer be the hero of the story. We as a people have yet to learn to write, and every time we learn to write, we either sell out Bob Johnson or Berry Gordy.
Yeah, man. And then, I'm sorry. Back on track. Back on track. Wes.
Facts are facts. You know,
facts are facts.
You know, facts are facts. And I have not sold out. I buy what I want. My father taught me something that shaped the way that I do business. If you want to eat, buy a restaurant. If you want gas, buy a gas station. My daddy liked watches. My granddaddy liked watches. I bought a watch company. Well, I'm not going to give my money to Rolex and still talk to y'all about black empowerment. How, Sway? So I found a 27-year-old genius, because I knew you were going to get to this. So I found a 27-year-old genius named Marcel Benson who taught himself how to design watches, who went and found manufacturers overseas.
Black man.
27-year-old black man, because God forbid, you know, I have a soft spot for young people who are geniuses who are not celebrated.
True indeed.
I saw me in him. And I said, hey, kid, let's make a deal. And we did. You know, so he's my partner. And I love that man. And I support that man. And I guide that man the best way I know how. So I have come to change the perception of what it is. And I need to get to this. And I'm so sorry, because I'm sure you have time. And
you're blessing us. This is the most important thing I'm doing all day. Period.
Black people, I'm sorry. And I'm not speaking to all. So if somebody please gets in your comments or sends me an email at dave@businessbullyshow.com talking about, well, not all black people, Dave. No shit, Sherlock. Go with it. I'm speaking general to a general audience. So if you're black, I'm talking about you or somebody you know. Deal with it. Black people hate themselves so much they don't recognize greatness when they see it. LeVar Ball, oh, he's arrogant. He's going to ruin his chances for his son. He pissed off Nike. That's it. Why y'all so mad at LeVar Ball, but y'all give Michael Jordan a pass when Michael Jordan has made $100 million himself? So what does that tell you he made for Nike? That's this year, bitch.
That's right.
So you get mad at LeVar Ball because he's saying that my son has already done what he needed to do. My son sold out UCLA, which hasn't happened in a decade, and you call him arrogant, and he's not playing the game. So what you're basically saying, so let me decode this so that you don't get it twisted. Now, before I say what I say, I need to say this as well. I have white friends. I do business with white people. I do business with Asian people. I do business with all people because all money is green and all money is good. And my family can't tell whether it's a black dollar or whether it's a white dollar. They just care that the dollars come in, and so do I. But I take those dollars and I do what I can for my people. So let's not get this
black but sell to anybody. Buy black but sell to anybody.
I'm trying to tell you. I don't understand why this is such a hard concept. But let me talk to you about the Negro manifestation of sickness. LeVar Ball is doing something for his sons that has never been done. He is putting them in a position of power to own their own brand, so they don't have to answer for anybody. You're saying that LeVar Ball is taking a stand that you don't have the balls or the ovaries, the testicles or the tits to make a stand for yourself. That's because you're worried about what happens at work, because a lot of you are that one black person that the white people come engage what's happening in the black community by asking, like they did me when I was running CBS Austin. Do you think that Kanye West thinks that George Bush hates doesn't care about black people? I said, I don't know. I never asked Kanye.
Go back to your cubicle.
Right. Please, as you were. You know what I'm saying? Like, but that's the thing. You're going to shit on a man who's trying to show people what it means to have a means of production. Oh, well, the price is too high. You wear $1,500 shoes. You wear $1,500 shoes with red bottoms, and they make Louboutins for men too. Don't get that twisted. You'll wear a $500 Gucci belt that has done nothing to empower your community. Which brings me back to LeVar Ball. I pity the fools who feel as though that man creating a lane for his children to eat that will sustain them for the rest of their lives. But then applause the Kardashians, go out and watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians, go out and get the Kim Kardashian game, go out and support Khloe Kardashian, go look at Caitlyn Jenner and watch her show. Her show? Okay.
Well, hey.
I'm making
need to have a whole show on pronouns.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. But his pronoun is her. I'm sorry. Her pronoun is her.
You see what we're doing?
We give deference and respect to people who don't look like us, and then we challenge and criticize people who do. I can't be bought. I can't be manipulated. If you sponsor my show, you don't get to tell me what comes on my show.
Or when to go to the bathroom.
Oh, bro. They told me one time, I'll never forget this long as they said, Mr. Anderson, you're taking too many bio breaks. I said, what the hell is a bio break? Oh, you know, when you go to the bathroom. Wait. You're watching me go to the bathroom?
Oh, yes.
And I was like, no. No. Because last I checked, I haven't had to have a hall pass. I'm somebody's father. I don't tell my kid when to go to the fucking, neither my daughters. When to go
let's
to the
talk about this. Let's talk about this because this is along the thread that I wanted to touch on. So, do you believe, and you've experienced a lot of success in business, you're going to experience a lot more, you've come across a lot of very successful people. We're talking about LeVar. Do you believe that in order to be a successful entrepreneur or a success period, that you must go to school? What is your perception? What is the reality that you've seen in terms of having to matriculate through a school system in order to achieve success?
Okay. I need to say this.
Go in.
Okay. My grandmother, Edith Lewis, had 7 children. She was a teacher. My Uncle Jimmy went to MIT. He was on the team that invented the Jumbotron. He also played bongos for Carlos Santana and a whole bunch of other people. My Uncle Ray was supposed to be the original brother from another planet, but he got sick. And so the guy who plays Olivia Pope's dad on Scandal got that gig, Joe Morton. My mother became a teacher after becoming a model, after becoming a master hairstylist. My mother became a teacher. My stepfather, Ed Jolly, God rest his soul, he was a teacher. So I respect the educators. I have zero respect for the education system. My mother was a three-time Teacher of the Year finalist. Ironically, I never saw anybody who looked like my mother win that award because I was at the award ceremony 3 times. I'll let that one sink in. The idea of an educational process that was designed to help farm workers and factory workers become better farm workers and factory workers no longer applies. People are different. People are different types of learners. Some people are experiential learners. Some people are learners by regurgitation. You know, you take out wood shop. You take out home economics, where they teach you how to write checks, how to cook meals, how to fend for yourself, how to sew. Things that you could actually use. You take out metal shop, where you could then get a certification or get hours towards a certification to become a mechanic. You take all that out of the schools. You take music, which has been proven scientifically and statistically to be able to allow people to think analytically and have improved scores in science, math, and reading comprehension. You take all of that out, but you make sure these Negroes can run with the ball, throw a ball, catch a ball, wrestle. You make sure of that. So they're teaching you things that do not matter. I'll give you an example. Unless you're going to be a veterinarian, does it matter how many valves the heart of a frog has to you?
Nah, bro.
Okay, cool. Does it matter who is on the $2 bill to you? We're in a cashless society. Who's on the $2 bill?
That's right. Nah.
So, if you can't answer how many stars are in Orion's belt, you know, what plate tectonics theory is, or any of that, congratulations, you just lost on Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Why are you putting a 10-year-old through all of that? Because you want to break him. And then you take homework. And when I say him, I'm speaking in mankind, like Terrence Howard said in Hustle and Flow. I'm talking about man. What's going on? What is your side, man? But when you talk about mankind, if you want to break a man, you fill his mind with nonsense so that there's no room for creativity. And then you make him take that nonsense home and tell him it's homework, which has been proven scientifically and statistically not to reinforce a goddamn thing, create ulcers and issues psychologically, and anxiety and attention deficit disorder. You know, then you create a system, and Umar Johnson speaks about this. Now, while brother Umar and I may not agree on everything, we agree on this. True. You can't tell me special education is not a construct to put black men and black girls into a lower level of intelligence. The IQ test, even though I have a quote-unquote 210 IQ, is rigged.
Absolutely.
I got a 700 on my SATs. I got a 724 the second time I took my SATs. Ain't nothing dumb about me. Yet and still, I failed the SATs twice. But I graduated from Temple with a 3.96. And the only reason I got a 3.96 was because my first freshman semester, I was having the time of my life.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the only reason I didn't get a 4.0. But who gives a rat's ass? Because those grades don't make me. Because I know plenty of A students who are saying, do you want fries with that?
Absolutely.
So if you're not going to be a doctor or a lawyer, an architect, something like that does require a certain level of certification and quote unquote a degree, because a degree is not an education. I teach people how to make money off of their podcasts. I teach people how to make money on YouTube. I teach people how to sell. I teach people how to speak. I teach people how to run their business. You give me a business owner. You give me 5 minutes with a business owner, and I can show you how to get them to $1 million in 5 minutes. Challenge me.
Wes, go ahead and cut this off. I need 5 minutes of your time, David. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I'll get you to $1 million. I've done it.
True indeed.
I'll give you an example. This is a story I don't think I've really told much, but I'm going to tell you this. When it was good, I got a call from Ricky Smiley 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, I had taken over Ricky Smiley's website, and I put in certain things because interaction at that time was key. MySpace was king. Facebook was, people weren't fucking with it that tough. It was there, but it wasn't what it is now. So MySpace was king, and I was like, Ricky, we need to get people in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create, there was this thing called Ning. So I created a Ning site. I created a Ning site for him. And then I created a chat room on his website. And I had the webmaster create a chat room on the website. The chat room was so hot, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 300 people chatting about the Ricky Smiley show. on their jobs, not being productive, sitting in their cubicle talking about the goddamn prank phone call we ran at 7 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
Stay with me. So Ricky Smiley calls me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He says, Taz, I need to talk to you. I'm like, yeah, what up, Rick? He says, listen. Oh, man, you ain't going to believe this. I'm like, what? I'm like, is it good news? He's like, yeah, everything's cool. I'm like, great. What is it? Lay it on me. Alfred wants to buy the website for $1 million. I said, don't you do it. And he says, like a kid who's being told you can't borrow the car. Oh, come on, Taz. Why not? Just stay with me, Ricky. I'm going to ask you one sentence. And if you still want to sell it after this, go on ahead. He says, so no matter what you say, I can sell it. If that's what you want to do, cool. But I guarantee you when I ask you this, you'll think about it differently. He said, okay. I said, Alfred offered to buy the website for you for how much? He said, $1 million. I said, $1 million. Cool. I said, Ricky, if he's going to buy it from you for $1 million, how much is he going to make off of it? And how much of that are you going to get? And he said, damn, I'll talk to you later. He hung up the phone. And from that time until the day after I got fired, that website wasn't sold. But the second I left, I just happened to go for shits and giggles. I looked on the website. All of a sudden, it said RickySmileyMorningShow.com, now a part of the Black Planet universe because Alfred bought Black Planet, which was a mistake. And I told him it was a mistake. And he got mad. He was like, why would you say it's a mistake? I said, because I have a friend named Carlisle who has an active profile on Black Planet. Because when Black Planet sold Black Planet to Radio 1, they told him that they had 40 million active users. And they were telling the truth. The problem was, he was like, well, who's Carlisle? I said, well, he's one of my best friends. We went to college together. He's been on episodes of Young and the Restless. He's a model. You know, he's an actor. He's a really good guy. Oh, man, well, yeah, those are the type of people we want. What's wrong with that? I said, well, unfortunately, Carlisle died 3 years ago of a brain aneurysm on a basketball court. And his profile is still active. I said, for the 80 million you spent in marketing and buying Giant Magazine and buying Black Planet and the money you're going to spend promoting it, if you had given me 15 million, I would have created another platform that would have been solely you, and you would not have had the whack juice on it. In other words, the internet moves forward. It doesn't go back. You haven't been Lycos in years. When the last time you looked up something on Ask Jeeves? When's the last time you had a Hotmail account? When's the last time you went and heard this? Welcome. You've got mail. The internet moves forward. It don't go back. And when something gets the whack juice on it, it's hard as fuck to get it off. So you put black people plus the internet plus something that was cool 20 years ago, it ain't cool no fucking more. You're fucked. And then, because I told the emperor he was naked, he got mad. He didn't do anything about it, and I wasn't fired because of that. But I told him the truth. No matter what the cost, always tell the truth. Because if you see somebody who looks like you making a mistake, you need to tell them. Why are we so...
That's your best friend. That's your best friend. The one that tells you the truth, whether you like it or not, that's your best friend. Unfortunately, we typically have the exact opposite reaction to someone being that honest. I seek those people out. I need you in my life. I need you to let me know when I'm whack. I need you to let me know when I'm falling off. Not because, you're trying to set me up and you're trying to step into my spot, but because you're genuinely coming from a place of love, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love my people. I love people who look like me. How could I not?
That's right.
I'm not.
That's where the criticism comes from as well. It's not downing your own people, bashing your own people, hating on your own people. It's because we want to see ourselves do better. Just to get our conversation on track.
Of course.
Because I'm guiding you down all kinds of paths. I'm trying to take advantage, but I understand your time is valuable.
Man, so my schedule has been cleared for the next 3 hours. You're good. We're going 3 hours. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. Hey, that's one of the benefits of being in complete control of your time. Absolutely. You determine what happens. Absolutely. But I want you to talk about Pitch, Close, Upsell, and Repeat. This is a book for the family listening that I send to all of my clients. And each month I select one of my clients. And I send them that book because of all the books that I've written hundreds of sales books. I did the Zig Ziglar thing. Mm-hmm. I did the Michael Gerber thing. I've read all these different business books from all these different white entrepreneurs. Nothing is like this. But I send this book to them because if you are not able to sell and generate a profit or generate revenue with your side hustle, then you can't pay me to provide the services you need me to provide, right? So as a measure of insurance to ensure that you can get things done in your business, I send them this book. That's how much I believe in that book, right? That's what that book has done for me as well. I've been through all kinds of professional sales course, PSS, and all of that mess. PSS is BS compared to pitch, close, upsell, and repeat. So break it down for us. Introduce us to the book. Introduce us to the steps.
Okay, so here's the thing. First of all, thank you. You have humbled me more in one conversation than most people have ever humbled me in my entire life. So hats off to you.
It's deserved.
I'm honored. To me, like, and this is another thing that black people have a problem with, myself included. We don't see ourselves as great. We see ourselves as just doing my job. Or I'm just, I just bake cakes, or I know how to make people feel better about themselves, or, I give the best hugs on the block, like that's serious. That is a gift. Do you know what a good hug can do for you? Do you know what a smile can do to somebody? A smile has prevented people from jumping off bridges, bro. I know. Real rap. But, I wrote that book because people were asking me, how do you do this? What are you doing?
Right.
And I got sick of answering because it takes too long to answer. So what I did was I used my life and my sales experience as an example of what needs to happen, because we look at sales wrong. First of all, sales is the worst curse word you can ever say to a black person, and arguably most people, but especially us. And because it's ugly, and nobody likes to be that, because just like the perception of how black people are viewed by the rest of the world, the perception of salespeople is that they come out of a trailer with a tweed jacket with leather patches trying to sell you a bullshit lemon ass car. And everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, salespeople are looked at as shady. People would rather hang out with an assload of injury lawyers before they hang out with a salesperson. But sales makes the world go round. So when you look at sales as a means to an end, as a necessary evil, people don't like flu shots, but they don't like having a flu either. Pick your poison. You have to be putting yourself, if you call yourself a business person, you have to be putting yourself on the offense. What most people do is they play not to lose. I play to dominate. I play to destroy everything in my path. And I don't apologize for that. Because if you're not, listen, I watch Triple H. I'm a big wrestling fan. I watched Triple H, and Triple H told a bunch of young people one time, he said, if you're not in this business to be the champion, why the hell are you here? That shaped my life. By the way, the reason I'm into wrestling is because Mr. T made WrestleMania a big deal because he was the biggest star in the world. Mr. T got on David Letterman, and David Letterman said, why do you wear all those chains? He said, you never asked my ancestors if those chains were heavy. He said, I wear all this gold because kings and queens wear gold. I wear this mohawk because I am descended from the Mandinka tribe. And this is a symbol of manhood and excellence and wisdom. So it ain't just a funny haircut, and it ain't no Mr. T starter kit. He was trying to educate y'all, but y'all wasn't conscious enough to catch it. And I swear to God, the person who introduces me to Mr. T is the person who's going to watch me break down and cry. But I digress. When it comes to selling, you have to know who you are first. We skip that part. We go right to, I make soaps and my soaps are the best. You have to know who you are.
Hold on. Run that back. Say that one more time.
In selling, you have to know who you are first, not your product. Listen, Asad, with all due respect, I can hop on anybody's show. I hopped on your show because you said, listen, this man sent me a screenshot. He said, I send your books out to my clients. I'm like, what the fuck? Why? Because I don't view me the way people view me. Like, I went to Indianapolis and people was in tears. And I'm like, I'm not a Backstreet Boy. I'm a fat kid with a loud mouth and a mohawk. You saved my business. I'm like, I don't even know you. That's humbling. Because I'm walking in a purpose I never imagined for myself. But while you make plans, God laughs. But we too arrogant. We want to get our way. We don't want to do what we're designed to do. And that's why you ache. That's why you got problems. That's why you got issues. That's why you're not happy in your relationships. That's why your bills ain't paid. Because you're doing things that you're not supposed to be doing. So to thine own self be true. Understand who you are. The ugly shit too. I talk too much. I don't have a filter. I'm not the easiest person in the world to get along with. I don't apologize for how I feel. I don't care whether you like it or not. I see things way before they happen, and I call it not because I'm psychic, but because I observe every successful person I admire is a Scorpio. And some people that I have issues with, they're Scorpios. Let me run down a list. Marcus Lemonis, Scorpio. Larry King, Scorpio. Wait for it. Gary Vaynerchuk, Scorpio.
Oh, man.
My wife, Scorpio.
Answer this. Why is it that every time I pull up one of your videos, actually, no, I'm not even going to touch on that yet. Because I'm noticing like some of these personalities that you've named out and some of the personalities that you've talked about in the past, it's like every time I pull up one of your videos, a white dude pops up in the intro, and it's the same commercial and the same white dude. What's his name? People always asking me to see my yard, and here's my library, and I just bought this land in Montana. That dude is. That's just me curious as to why that is. But anyway, go ahead.
Because I'm hot in these streets, and he wants the black audience.
I mean,
and I say that humbly, but I mean, come on, dog. This has happened. Okay, Little Richard would make records, and then Pat Boone would go and make the same record. This ain't nothing new. And I'm not saying that all these gurus are copying off of me, but I do say that some of these gurus are following me. And if you watch them and you go back to my old shit and you cross-reference their new shit, there are some very
striking similarities. True indeed.
I mean, you've been through 90 of my YouTube videos. Seen anything that strikes you as interesting? Seen some things you might have heard before? So.
Real talk. So pitch, close, upsell, repeat. Walk us through that process.
Yeah.
Let's get some value for the listeners.
Yeah. All right. So you have to know yourself first. Pitching. What happens is people do this. I have this product, and my product is special because I have it, and it's wonderful, and it's my magical little widget, and this widget's going to change the world. Your damn product. your world-changing opportunity. You're doing it wrong. You need to put yourself in a servant's place. A servant understands that it is about the people first. Jesus was a servant. He washed other people's feet. He absolved people of the pain that they had. Jesus went out and discovered people's pain and then freed them of it. So when you find people's pain, there's two things you do. When you sell a product, you're setting people free. When you're selling somebody, you have to step in between their excuses and their pain and call them on their bullshit and then show them how what it is, your product or service, is their solution. That's how you close somebody. And upsell happens all the time. You want to supersize that? Do you want fries with that? How about 2 apple pies for $1? I use McDonald's because it's the basis on every single fast food restaurant in most businesses, whether they realize it or not. The largest landowner in the world is McDonald's.
The largest landowner in the world is McDonald's.
McDonald's. Because not only do they own the franchise, but you have to have enough money to buy 2 franchises. But McDonald's owns the land and then they lease it to the people. So the upsell is you come in there for a burger and fries. Now you got a burger, you got a fries, you got McFlurries, you then got yourself a 4-piece nugget just as a snack while you're driving home.
So this is an add-on.
This is an add-on.
Upselling.
When upselling, that's an add-on. That's something else that you do. And then to repeat the process is to have anybody. Les Brown said this to me, and it's stuck with me ever since. David, even a broke clock is right twice a day. Keep going. So you can fall. The worst salesperson can fall on a sale. The worst business owner can fall on a sale. You can fall into a sale, but can you do it again? You have to have something that you can do over and over again when it counts. So what you need to do is when you get that sale that you just fall into, start writing down everything that you did. Start talking about everything that you said. Run it back in your head. Be as clear as you possibly can. And then
that's the repeat.
That's the repeat. When I close people like this. So, how's that cubicle working for you? Oh, so your boss is 30 and you're 45. How's that make you feel? See, now I'm hitting you on this pain. Oh, well, I have to think about it. How much longer are you going to think? While you thinking, you're letting a fat kid with a mohawk lap you. Repeat. How does that make you feel? Now, while people may think that that's harsh, I got to put harsh terms on our people. The people who say that they want to be free. Harriet Tubman carried a gun, not for the slave catchers, but for the slaves who were going to run back to Massa because they were too afraid to go all the way through to freedom.
That's right.
Catch that. She had it for the other slaves. She didn't have it for the slave catchers. She knew how to handle the slave catchers. She didn't make sure none of these other people were so weak-minded and so scared and so pussy-footed that they would sit around and run back. So you got to be clear on what you do. And I put a bunch of rebuttals. I put a bunch of closing strategies in that book. I put myself into that book so that you don't have any excuses.
And the rebuttals part is worth its weight in gold by itself, because I've found, and I think many of the listeners who are actually doing this, not the people who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs or they sit around listening to a bunch of things all day and they don't do anything, but the ones that are actually doing this, your sales starts with your ability to overcome those rebuttals. Because typically, I've noticed this, and this just happens to be my industry, people are typically apathetic. It's hard for me to show them that pain. And even when I show them that pain, there's still a little bit of apathy. So being able to overcome those rebuttals and bring that pain to the surface is critical. You said something earlier that I really want to emphasize as well. When you sell a product, you are setting people free. I wrote that down. Because true sales isn't swindling. It's not necessarily convincing. It's not forcing someone to do something against their will and separating them from their money. You really are solving a pain that they have. You're setting them free from a problem, and it should be seen as that. Hopefully, for the listeners who are struggling with sales, you don't have the cursor. And I get scared every time I step out and prospect in the streets, on the phone. There's some fear there because it's an unnatural thing to roll up on somebody. You don't know who you're getting ready to talk to or what situation you're rolling up in. But when I go in with the understanding that I'm helping you, you have pain, you have a problem, I have the solution. And as a entrepreneur, business owner, side hustle, whatever, it's imperative that I give you that solution and help you heal that pain. I think if you go in with that spirit, that'll really help you overcome your fear of sales for those people who are listening.
No, I think that it is critical to understand when you do this. I'm scared every time. But you know what's even scary? Right. You know what's even scarier?
Cubicle Nation.
The cubicle's scary. Disappointing my wife and kids is scary.
Wow.
See, I leveled up when I got married. Playtime was over. Well, no more room for excuses. Now I got lives depending on me. Now I got people who need me, who have made their lives a part of my life, who now look to me to provide. So I'm not afraid of a no. When I met my wife, I walked right up to her and said, "My name's David Anderson. I'm going to marry you." She said, "You're crazy." I said, "What does that have to do with what I just told you?" So now that you know that the woman that I told that to became my wife after me pitching and pitching and pitching, that was the hardest sale I ever made.
Finesse.
As many times as I had to pitch the idea of being with me to her, you ain't. Because I sleep on Egyptian cotton sheets with a girl of my dreams who tells me, "Baby, I love you." She loves all of me. She not only loves my dirty drawers, but she washes them too. And I'm going to make sure that I am worthy every day of that love. By making sure she ain't got a care in the world. And if you're not doing that, you can't call yourself a man.
Facts.
If you're not doing that for your husband, you can't call yourself a wife. But, you know, you rather be strong and independent. But that's a whole nother hour show.
Facts. Yeah, speaking of, I want to talk about, can we talk black for just a quick second?
Yeah, let's talk black.
This is United Black America Radio. So I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Number one, I want to ask you if you believe that, we face some unique challenges because the perception is, especially when you're talking about business, that the playing field is level. That's number one. Number two, I want to talk about systematic white supremacy. A lot of people don't understand what that means. It's something that we've devoted a lot of our show to clarifying and educating our listeners on. It exists, and I want to know in your mind what are some strategies, tactics, and solutions that we can apply to combat systematic white supremacy. You've seen it firsthand. And then finally, I want to ask you on your opinion on why we as a group, right, and the numbers are there. Right, you mentioned this when you were talking about the music industry, right? The top tier, all white on. Atlanta, they call it a black mecca. But what I noticed when I was living in Atlanta is at the top of all those high rises, white faces, typically white Jewish faces and names. So my question to you is, why have we found ourselves behind other competing groups? So number one, challenges. Number two, strategies against systemic white supremacy. And number three, competition.
Here's the thing. Just because something exists does not make it I'm trying to put this the most articulate way I can, but I can't, so I'm just going to be me. Just because something exists does not mean that you have to be a victim of it. You're only a victim of it when you put yourself in a subservient position, and that in and of itself is a choice. However, there are certain aspects of systematic white supremacy that you cannot get around. A lot of times you don't understand that if somebody else is in control of your life, you cannot be. Two polarizing things cannot occupy the same space.
That's right.
That's science. So if somebody is diametrically opposed to your success and they are in a position over you with both strength, history, resources that they stole from you.
That's right.
And you are ignorant of most of that, not all, but most of that, then what winds up happening is you become conquered. And you don't even realize that you've been conquered. But you believe, because you've been taught to worship Cesare Borgia, that God is white, so then white people must be God.
Now, what do you mean by Cesare Borgia?
Okay, Cesare Borgia was the son of the Pope. The Pope commissioned Michelangelo and his team, distinction, to create an image of Jesus that was based upon Cesare Borgia. If you Google Cesare Borgia,
this is Medici area.
Yes.
Medici era, rather.
Yep. So if you Google Cesare Borgia, he looks a lot like that blonde-headed, blue-eyed Jesus y'all worship so much. I didn't make that up. That's history. You might want to read some. So if you believe that white people are God, then what's that make you? Servants, obey thy masters. Now that has a different context. And then when you don't allow black people to read, because if they actually read the book for themselves, they realize skin of bronze hair like wool can't possibly be that blonde hair, blue-eyed white man.
You know, all kinds of amazing things happen when black men and women pick up books. Picking up books and actually reading what was in the Magna Carta and the Declaration of Human Rights is what sparked the uprising in Haiti that led to people like Toussaint Louverture rising up and creating the first black republic in the Western Hemisphere. That's what happens when we read. Pitch, close, upsell, repeat. Link in the show notes.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So when you read, you learn things, and it's funny how Danny Glover, who was a phenomenal actor, when he started pursuing the idea of doing a movie about the Haitian Revolution, doing a movie about Toussaint Louverture, all of a sudden he's doing straight to Netflix movies.
Wow.
Think about it. The last hit movie he had was Lethal Weapon.
That's right.
4, I think was the last one, with Chris Rock and Joe Pesci and all that. And it's funny because he did those movies with a guy who played his best friend, who walked around and told his girlfriend that he hopes she gets raped by a pack of niggas. Peep game.
Wow.
Peep game. The same person who made The Passion of the Christ.
Mel Gibson.
Okay. So, when you control, and this is the thing. When you control the game, whether it's a job, whether it's a culture, whether it's a record company, whether it's a radio station or a magazine, pick up what I'm saying, you can then dictate when you walk with somebody. One of two things happen. You either move faster to keep up with their pace, or they adjust their pace to yours. whose pace are you adjusting to? Who are you afraid you're going to look? Who are you afraid of looking bad in front of because of LeVar Ball? And then ask yourself why that's so important to you. Because what you missed is LeVar Ball sat up there and he got more press than any damn sneaker company. And it's still, if you watch TMZ every day, TMZ Sports every day, LeVar Ball on there. ESPN every day, LeVar Ball on there, either physically or mentioned in a story. Pay attention. Pay attention to what's happening.
You guys, I feel like, have kind of set a blueprint for what athletes, the modern day athletes, should be looking to do, particularly African American athletes, where you said instead of just, because we see it a lot of times, a guy makes the pros and his friends just hang out and, you know, they're partying and all that stuff. You guys, I mean, all have now been empowered and empowered yourselves to, if LeBron retired this year, you still are doing your own thing. Rich is still doing his own thing. Randy, you know, could work with other players in the league. When did you guys decide that that's what you wanted to take this opportunity and create businesses and create livelihoods for yourselves rather than just kick it and have fun because, hey, LeBron's going to be a multimillionaire and be in the NBA?
It's a delicate balance, and I would, you know, any players or players' friends who ever hear me speak or I'm listening to this podcast, I would say it's a very delicate balance of not rushing it. And when I say not rushing it is a lot of times I meet players or players guys come up to me all the time, which I like and I enjoy, and I will always give them any advice that I have and all the knowledge that I know to help them get a shortcut. All the things I've learned, I'll give them to you right here, right now, all the things that it took me 15 years now to learn. But the thing you have to balance is not rushing it, not looking at me or Rich or Randy and going, I want that thing right now. I want to be like those guys right now. We've been doing this now for 16 years. I was an intern at Nike in 2001, 16 years ago now, going on 17 years. So it's been a process. It's been a steady, long journey and a process of building LeBron's business, building our own individual reputations, our own individual knowledge base, understanding what we all want to do. I never wanted to be an agent. Being an agent is not my dream. It's never the thing that I want to do. I've never been LeBron's agent. I never had an agent license. I've never applied for an agent license. It took Rich a little time, but he figured out that's what he wanted to do. So he went and started his company, and that's what he does every single day. He runs his agent business. So it takes time, and it's a process, but the balance that you have to hit is, to answer your question, when did we decided, is you have to look at even LeBron, who has had one of the greatest careers in all of sports today, and he's still got more to play, but even up till right now, he's had one of the greatest careers we've ever seen in any sport, but there's still a window on it. There's still a finite time when you're an athlete that, relative to the rest of life, is pretty short. Yeah. You know, 14 years, sure. 15, 16, 17 years, 18 years. Still, Kobe played 20. Yep. 20 relative to a person, all goes right, you should live at least to 80 or 85. That's only a quarter of your time on earth. So it's like balancing. It's a process, and I have to learn and understand and build a knowledge base and understand what I'm passionate about with, there's a finite time and the athlete's career is going to end at some point. And when it ends, am I set up to go do my own thing and know what I want to do? So I think, you know, it's just finding that balance. And for us, you know, we really found it, and all of us work very hard. We all understand that, we all understood from the beginning that LeBron's life is LeBron's life. I'm not LeBron. I'm never going to be LeBron. So I can't expect, if I go to a restaurant with LeBron and it's the most crowded restaurant in LA and they like move people and get a table in the back and we all of a sudden have a table for 6 when there was no tables at all, and I show up a week later without LeBron, they're not going to treat me like that. So I understand that. So I always understood that I'm never going to be him. I can't score 34 points in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I can't score 41 twice in the NBA Finals. So I don't think I deserve that treatment. If I could do that, then that'd be a different case. So I think we understood that early. We really lived that. We really understood, and we really put in the work and really committed ourselves to the process. And it was less about having a good time and making money and it was more about the process of like learning and educating ourselves and finding out what our passions were.
When did you guys start thinking that way? Was there a period where at first it was like, hey man, let's just have fun, this is great? Or was it all along you were thinking, all right, we don't want to, we can do something great here with businesses and things like that?
Yeah, it was always, it wasn't as thought out and as strategic as people would think until later. We started really thinking about how do we do things. But from the beginning, it was always, my favorite movie of all time is The Godfather. And it was always a line from The Godfather. It was always, we got to hit him while we got the muscle. And while LeBron is playing and can score 30 points a night, we have to figure out what it is we can do. And in business, it's all about leverage and taking advantage of time and opportunity. So when you have an opportunity and you have time, and you have to take advantage of it. And that's, any business person would tell you that. Any Jamie Horowitz who runs FS1 and obviously who brought you over here would tell you, you have to take advantage of timing. That's what he's doing with FS1. So we were looking at like, while LeBron is playing, we have to go and set up our businesses, our lives while he's playing, because at some point he's going to be done playing. And at that point, who knows if he still gets that table in the back. Yeah. And also, who knows what the hell he wants to do. He's definitely going to be a wealthy guy, right? Yeah. So he may say, I'm just going to live the rest of my life on a boat in the south of France. Like, he may not want to do things anymore once he's done playing. I don't know. So we got to do it while he's playing.
Most people believe, and I know you've known LeBron since you guys were kids, but it's not, he had his crew, growing up, because you're 3 years older. And, we saw him more than a game, his high school teammates, who the guys he was real close with. I know he met Rich when he was a junior in high school.
Yep.
So how did you guys become the inner circle? Randy, and Rich.
Well, his best friends from high school, as you referenced more in the game, was the first documentary we did with Lionsgate. On More Than a Game, those 4 best friends are still his best friends, too. He talks to those guys just as much as he speaks to me, maybe even more. But those guys are still his best friends, and they're the same age. They went to high school with him, and they're all out doing fantastic things. They all have families.
Some of them are playing overseas, right?
2 of them are playing overseas. Willie, who played with him, if you ever watch More Than a Game, Willie is actually the athletic director at our high school at St. Vincent St. Mary's.
Really?
Yeah, he's the athletic director. Wow. I think now it's been 2 or 3 years. He's doing a fantastic job as an athletic director. So those guys are all still very close. They get together in the summer. They hang out. So those guys are still his best friends. And for us, it was just the natural order of things. We started doing business. Rich, as you said, has become an agent, and that was what he was passionate about. And I did my thing. Drew and Rome, they were passionate about still playing. They're still playing. Still very good pros. I think they've each had 10-year pro careers or 11-year pro careers. So those are all still his best friends, too, and considered part of his inner circle, too.
So the way I may be wrong. The way I've envisioned it is, because you and how old were you when you met LeBron or knew him?
I was 8. Okay. It was my 8th birthday, and he was 5.
Okay, so the way I envisioned it, I don't know how close you guys were at that age, but I know you were a good athlete, and I kind of envisioned.
Okay.
Well, you were player of the year. I'm gonna give you some props because I covered high school sports in Ohio little before you, but player of the year.
I was okay
at St. Vincent. Player of the year in Ohio.
I wasn't a great athlete. I could think the game though.
So who was your game like?
My game,
like if you had to compare it to
if I had to compare it, it was a little Mark Jackson, later Mark, not St. John's Mark Jackson, like Indiana Pacers.
But you scored more, right?
I was like 17 in high school as a senior. So it was a little Mark Jackson, I would say, like Indiana Pacers, maybe a little New York Knicks Mark Jackson, mixed with a little bit of, because I played like point guard, But then I could also play a little bit of down. I could guard like a bigger guy just because I was willing to do it, and I understood down low. So a little Mark Jackson mix, probably a little Jalen Rose, but I'm not as tall, nowhere near as tall as Jalen Rose. So somewhere in that range.
That's pretty good.
But Jalen's a good player. But Jalen's not like I wasn't a super athlete.
Yeah.
I couldn't like leap. I couldn't run fast.
You could dunk.
I could dunk, but not. I wasn't like getting a dunk every game. You know, not nowhere near that.
Well, this is a huge claim to fame. You're the last teammate of LeBron's to lead his team in scoring.
Well,
and probably the only one, right?
He actually probably ended up averaging more than me that year as his freshman year. Because as we got into the playoffs, in the state tournament, he went crazy. I think he scored 25 and like 30 in the last 2 games in the state. Okay. So he ended up averaging more than me. But I am the last player to get MVP on a team he was on.
Okay. That's a huge claim to fame. And you played football too.
I played football too. Yeah.
Did you play all 4 years?
I mean, you in Ohio, kind of every kid, every boy plays football. It's like a rite of passage. You kind of have to play football.
It's a football state.
100%.
LeBron really put it on the map in terms of basketball. For the most part, you had a few.
Yeah, you had players. I mean, there's obviously. Before my time and probably even before your time, there was Jerry Lucas and John Havlicek from Ohio.
Nate Thurman
and Gus
Clark
Johnson. Clark Kellogg. So there were like Jerome Lane. There were Jimmy Jackson.
Yep.
So there were one-offs, but for sure LeBron has made Ohio, all after him, considered kind of like a hotbed for hoops.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, kind of pre-LeBron, it was like there were players, but there was never anything like that jump. You know, Michael Redd was from Ohio, Kenny Gregory, but LeBron made it more thought of as like a basketball state for sure. Before him, it was like, there were players, but even when Jimmy Jackson, who before LeBron was probably the best high school, the best high school player ever in the state, pre-LeBron, it was still a football state, because of Ohio State and because of what we do. I think we have, besides probably Texas and California, the most Division I football schools in the country. So it was definitely always a football place. So I played football for sure.
You were a receiver too.
I was a receiver and a strong safety. I played both.
Okay. I envisioned it like growing up. We all got that kid who's older than us, who's a really good athlete that we kind of look up to. Mm-hmm. That's how I envisioned it was with you and LeBron. And I mean, and I'm humbly, was that kind of how it was? Because you were older, obviously.
Yeah, I was older. When he showed up to high school, he was a freshman. I was a senior. He was super talented. I mean, he was super cerebral, knew the game and had instincts and just understood the game at a different level than anyone. And he was skinny. He was like, he kind of played like Ray Allen then, but like a young Ray Allen, when Ray Allen was like a slasher and a finisher, and used the slashing and used the jumper to open up the slashing and finishing, and he could really pass, and he loved to pass and distribute. And he loved seeing other guys do great on his team. Always loved that, and never wanted anyone left out or left behind. And I think we only had 2 seniors. I was one of them. And the previous year, obviously, I was a junior, and we went all the way into the game before the Final Four. And it was a bit seen as my team coming back my senior year. And him and the other freshmen, Willie, Sheon, and Drew, came in, and they were super talented. And I think he recognized that I also saw it as, in order for our team to be great, these young guys are going to have to grow up and be good too. So I welcomed them with open arms. I never once no, this is my team. Okay. I was like, we're going to be good. These guys are going to have to help us, and especially him and the other ones too. They were all very talented, and I think they all just gravitated to me naturally. You're a 15-year-old kid about to play varsity basketball, and as it went in Ohio, at St. V, we basically play on the highest level of varsity basketball. We played the best teams in the state. And I think they just saw it as like me welcoming them with open arms but also still being stern and being a leader and teaching them how it went on varsity. It's a new thing. It's a new level.
Yeah. How close were you guys before he got to St. V?
We were close, not super, super close. We were close as kids. I knew him as a little kid, as I said, when I was 8. But then LeBron moved around. I stayed in the same neighborhood. I literally still own the house in my neighborhood. But I lived in that same neighborhood from basically my whole life.
Okay.
Until I went off to college. But then LeBron was in that neighborhood. He was in the projects that was next to the neighborhood down the hill. It's funny. It's at the bottom of the hill, and it's literally called the bottom. I tell people that. Like, if you're from Akron and you ask LeBron where he's from, he would say, "I'm from the bottom."
Yeah.
And it's literally at the bottom of a hill. Like, the projects are literally at the bottom of the hill, but socioeconomically, it was at the bottom too. So it's like a weird metaphor to sound from the bottom.
Yeah.
But that's what we called it. And then he kind of bounced around and moved around and ended up we were from North Akron, ended up in West Akron. And then right before he came to St. V, we kind of reconvened and we were really close because we had that previous relationship dating back 7 or 8 years ago.
When did you start seeing that not only is this guy really good for a freshman, but he's going to the NBA or even going to be a star?
I probably didn't recognize that. I mean, as a freshman, by the end of his freshman year, it was
you guys won state.
We won state. We won. We were undefeated. He was fantastic. And the other guy, Little Drew, who went 7 for 7 in the state championship game
from 3, right? 7
yeah,
for
it was
7
like a
from 3.
miracle. If you watch more than a game, it's in there. It's like
yeah.
his stat line was literally like field goals 7 for 7, 3-pointers 7 for 7, points 21, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 fouls, 0 turnovers. I think he had 0 everything else, and he played. Only thing he had was field goals, 3-pointers, 7 for 7, 7 for 7, 21 points in minutes. He didn't do anything else. No steals, no blocks, but he was like tiny. He was like,
how tall was he at that time?
I'm not even sure he was 5'2". I mean, he might have been.
Wow.
I mean, he was like 5'1". I mean, maybe 125 pounds or
That's
something.
incredible.
And he just got in the game, and it was unbelievable.
He came off the bench.
I mean, when you watch more of the game, you could see it. The footage is there. He came off the bench, and the other team's fans were like laughing because his shorts were like to his ankles. And his drawstring was tied so tight around his waist. It was like, you know what I mean? Like, you could see the string was so long after he pulled it, like went to his knees. So, but by the time that freshman year had ended, it was definitely clear at the end of his freshman year, I would say we were saying, because LeBron grew a lot. At the beginning of his freshman year, he was probably 6 foot or 6'1", because I'm like 6'2". We were about the same. He was like 6'1", approaching on 6'2". So basketball season starts in November. We won the state title in March. He was probably 6'3 and a half, 6'4".
Wow.
So it was like, and I could tell by the dunks he was doing. Like, he was going from like one hand to two hand. As you know, you play basketball. If you're dunking one hand, like I could never dunk two hand. Because once you go to two hands, it's a whole nother level of dunking.
Yeah.
So he was dunking two hand, no problem, catching it, no dribble. So it was like, at the end of that year, it was clear he was going to be a high major college player and probably a pro player. And our coach at the time, I think he said it like he's probably going to go straight to the NBA. He just felt that was the route for him. But then by the time his end of his sophomore year, it was clear like, oh, okay, this guy's going to be straight to the NBA and be a really good NBA player. And then by the time he was a junior, like, oh, he's going to be a star NBA player. He's going to be like a superstar. It's clear he's going to be a superstar. Then by the time he was a senior, the world knew him.
Yeah. Now, we were talking once before recently. You're saying when he was 16, you guys would go to the Hoops Gym, the famous Hoops Gym in Chicago, and play with a bunch of pros. Tell me about that.
Yeah, he was 16 because I was 19.
So he's going into his junior year? Or?
He was going into his junior year. Wait, let me just think for 1 second. Because he broke his wrist one year.
He broke his wrist his junior year, I think, right?
Going into his senior year, yeah. Yes. So that was in the spring. So it was the year before that, going into his junior year. Okay. I was coaching his AAU team, and we were playing in a tournament in Chicago. It was kind of before the world knew about LeBron. But we were in this tournament in Chicago. I think it was Mac Irvin's tournament, who was a legendary AAU guy in Chicago. And LeBron was playing fantastic, him and Little Drew. And, we were kids. They were kids from Akron, but we had LeBron. We knew how good LeBron was, and Little Drew could really play too. Yeah. And together with LeBron, they were fantastic because Little Drew's a shooter. And as you know, you see today, it was the same thing. If you put a shooter or a couple of shooters with LeBron, you got a chance in like any game. So, And we played in the championship. I'll never forget. It was a fantastic team from Chicago. I forgot their name, but D. Brown was on their team. We ended up playing in Illinois.
Yep.
And they had another guy. I don't think Luther Head was on their team, but another guy who ended up playing at Illinois or a Big Ten school. And they were really good. But we hung with them. In the crowd was a guy named Greg Ryan who worked for Tim Grover. And Greg happened to be, he's from Cincinnati, still a good friend of mine to this day. But Greg came up to me and started talking to me. And one of my best friends was our assistant, who's now the head coach at Youngstown State. And we started talking. He started telling us he worked at this gym called Hoops. I had no idea what the hell Hoops was. And he started telling us about it. And he works for Tim Grover, and it's the gym. And like, yeah, I think I've heard stories about it. And he invited us over. So we went over that spring and took LeBron. And we were kind of just like in awe, literally like in awe. It was like this basketball heaven. It was like this little building with 2 courts in it, a weight room that wasn't huge but had all the technology. It was technology advanced for weightlifting. But then during the days, like all the pros would come in, like Antoine Walker, Ron Artest, and Jamal Crawford, and all the pros. Paul Pierce was there, and Penny Hardaway, Stackhouse. They would start rolling into this gym. It was like a basketball heaven. They'd work out for like an hour, and then they'd play. They just like play pickup for like an hour. And at the time, Michael was retired, and
Michael Jordan.
Yeah, Michael Jordan was retired, and LeBron had never even really lifted it in his life. You know, he was like 16, and Tim would like talk to him. Tim talked to him about lifting and why it's important. You know, he spent like 10 or 20 minutes, and we went there every day for that kind of that weekend while we were in that tournament. G invited us back, so we went back. We had to convince our moms to let us go back up, and G was this guy. You know, he's like, they can come up and they can stay with me and just go to Hoops for like a week. So we went back up and we went to Hoops every day for like a week. And LeBron would roll into the gym. All the pros would be there. I mean, like, remember the Bulls? They call them the baby Bulls. And it was like Jamal, Eddie, Ron.
Eddie Curry,
Ron Artest was, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, he'd show up to the gym with like, he'd show up with like no socks on and hoop. Like, Ron, one thing about Ron Artest, he's a hooper. He's just like, he like forgot his socks, he just hooped. But, you know, they would lift and then they would play. Tim would train all the guys. Okay. He had a couple of trainers who would help him. And then they would just play pickup, like games to 7. And at first, it was like LeBron was this 16-year-old kid. They're like, you know, he couldn't get in the first game or two because they're pros. They need to work. Did they
know who he was? What like
at the time they had started to know who he was because remember in his sophomore year, the game that made LeBron kind of his name kind of known is in his sophomore year they played a game in Columbus against Oak Hill, and St. V lost the game on a buzzer beater. But Oak Hill at the time had names that didn't really turn out to be NBA superstars, but at the time they were the best team in the country. They had this kid Rashad Caruth, Billy Edlin. They had Bogans who went to Oklahoma State, Sagana Diop, and Justin Gray. That was their starting 5. And LeBron, he carried his team and went tit for tat. I think he had like 33. And what happened was, at the time, B.J. Armstrong was the assistant GM for the Bulls. I think Jerry Krause was still their GM. Yep. They were in the stands because Sagana, remember, went straight to the league. And I think Danny Ainge was in the stands. So all of a sudden, it was like one of those things where I think the pro scouts were sitting there and all of a sudden they're like digging through their program like, who the hell is 23 on this? You know, they thought they were coming to see Oak Hill. And I think there's articles you can go back and read where they talk about, like, I just seen I think BJ might have said it or Danny or one of them, like, I just saw the best high school player in the country. And he wasn't on Oak Hill. He was just kid. So he had a name from that game. That was the first game that kind of helped his name grow. And then he went to 5-star and Howard Garfinkel had talked about him. So they knew who he was, but they're pros. Why the hell do they care about a 16-year-old high school player? Who the hell is that? What difference does it make? We're here to get our work in and we're trying to get better. But then Tim would let him in at the end of the run. And so when he was 16, he played a couple pickup games against like Paul and Jerry and Twan. And Twan was fantastic. He'd talk a lot of shit and play and do the shimmy and Ron. And he was out there playing. And if you watch the game, he wasn't like dominating. He wasn't like, but he didn't stick out. You didn't go like, oh, there's a kid out there. It was like, oh, there's just another player out there. Like, you know, he got a couple buckets. went up and down. He wasn't at all ready to defend. Like if Stackhouse caught him, he'd take him to the hole. He wasn't at all ready to defend. But on offense, if you can pass, you can play. And he could pass, and he had the size and the ability to get in and got a couple buckets. And it'd be interesting to see how he remembers those games. But I remember them for sure as him not at all ready to defend, but he never stuck out either way, which is impressive for a 16-year-old kid. He never stuck out like he doesn't belong.
Yeah.
But he also didn't stick out like he wasn't dominating anyone.
Yeah.
But he was getting buckets and making plays and kind of being the LeBron that you know today.
Do you know what that did for him? Did that do anything confidence-wise for him or anything?
That's a good question. I've never asked him that question, but I wonder, did he leave there going, okay, now I have a gauge of what it's like to be on the floor with pro guys. I'm sure, there's little nuances to the game of basketball that normal people don't understand or see. And I'm sure one of them he probably understood from there is like, when you're on the floor, because I've been on the floor with pros before in pickup games, it's a different floor.
Yeah.
When you're on the floor with guys that size and that length, what people don't understand is even the little guys in the NBA are super long and actually, for normal humans, pretty tall. Like,
yeah, you're right.
People think Kyrie Irving or Eric Bledsoe or Steph Curry is the little guy. Well, in normal life, they're like 6'2" or 6'3". They're like a decent size. That's a big person. Yeah. And like you look at Eric Bledsoe, he looks short, but his arms are super long. So when you're on the court with pros, all of a sudden passing lanes or lanes you thought were there because the guy's arm's down, the minute he sticks it up, the court shrinks. So I'm sure that's probably one of the things he took from it. But I'd be interesting to see. That's actually something I may have to ask him about this summer when we're chilling. Is like, how does he remember those games?
Yeah.
And did he take anything from it like that was a gauge?
Now you guys met Jordan up there for the first time, right?
I'll never forget it. And that's one thing I know he's talked about before. It was one of the last days, and we'd always be the last to leave because we were with Greg, and Greg had to stay back and like clean up and help him finish when all the guys were leaving. So it was at the time that Michael was, I'm not sure. He probably already made his decision he was coming back, but he was like, there was like rumors and he was thinking about it. And we were getting ready to leave, and we were literally walking out the door and down the street, right down Randolph, because that's where the gym was. I go to Randolph Street now when I'm in Chicago because there's a couple of great restaurants. This red Ferrari pulls down the street, and it was literally like, for LeBron and I, it was like Black Jesus was coming down the street in a red Ferrari with a bucket cap on, and he pulled into the parking lot, and all the players had gone. And I think he was coming to I think he just missed the gym. And he, he had that urge, and he came to talk to Tim, and we happened to be standing out in front, and it was like, holy shit, looked like, and he got out of his car, and he walked over to us, and to me, it looked like he was like levitating. I was like, this guy didn't even, he walked over here and his feet didn't even touch the ground. It's Michael Jordan. Like, it's Michael Jeffrey Jordan in the flesh. And I couldn't believe it. And we went back upstairs into the weight room. There was just me, him, Tim, G, and LeBron. And he talked to us for like 15 minutes. And that was the first time LeBron ever met Michael. We talked for about maybe even a little bit longer. And Michael sat and had a conversation with us just about basketball. And I honestly don't remember anything that was said in the conversation. He was very, I think he was talking to LeBron about like NBA and being a pro and giving him lessons. But it was like, it was like everything just sounded like blurred out to me. Like I was listening to God speak. It was like, I don't even remember what he was saying. And that was the first time he met Michael and myself.
Do they have much, what's their relationship now? Obviously there's a great deal of respect there for each other. Do they have much of a friendship or anything like that? Or
I wouldn't say it's a super tight friendship, but it's huge. LeBron still looks up to Michael and still sees Michael as the best and the guy that set the standard for being a basketball player who defined excellence as a basketball player. And they talk. They, I don't know how often, but they definitely talk. I talk to Michael. Michael and I are very cool. I've been to Michael's house for dinner and had conversation with him, took my dad. He showed me around his house in Florida. If I see Michael, I still have that same feeling. It's Michael Jordan. Like, it's always going to be that to me when I see Michael Jordan. And I talk to him all the time. He's always very open. And Stephen, I would say, when I read that, as I tell people, it was how I felt. And the way that I felt is Phil was out to marginalize us And I felt like everything that I had done in my career, working in this industry, in the sports business, had led me to that moment where I wasn't going to let him marginalize us or let that go unknown. And I think the fact of the matter is, Phil, he wrote in his book in 2004 the fact that, it was about his last season. I think the book was called Last Season. He wrote that, LeBron is a good player, he's progressed, he's going to be good, but I don't think any 19-year-old should be in the NBA, and something along the lines of because they become too dependent on their posses who fetch cars for them and get girls. So he defined what he felt a posse was. That's what he said. That's not what I said.
Right.
So that's what he said. Then when he says it about us again in 2016, what I'm basically telling you is I don't fetch cars and get girls. I mean, listen, I'm a man who likes pretty girls, but that's not my job. My job isn't to get girls and fetch cars. That's not what I do. And when he said that, what I took it as is he's trying to marginalize us and disrespect us. And it wasn't only about me and LeBron and what we do, but how about all the other young guys like ourselves, African Americans or others who are in this business trying to make a way for ourselves? I'm not going to let him marginalize us, and I think everyone else shouldn't be marginalized either. And when he used that word, he had already defined it in 2004.
There's two things a couple things come to mind, but I think that, we talk about, would he have said that if it was him with his agent, manager, publicist, lawyer, good friend, Brad from Laguna Beach and whatever, is it, posse indicates, the weed carrier, you're a bunch of homies from school. Like nobody's actually serving a professional purpose.
Du Bois.
So if for me, what struck me is that particular, what he was talking about is it felt like a specific night, a specific incident, not just a general LeBron and his posse in general. He was talking about a specific time when he requested to stay in Cleveland. So I wonder if that struck a chord for you because you remembered it that night. If he's talking about a specific incident, in which case you remember that it wasn't about some fucking hang. You weren't going to stay at the club. Is it about business people or is it about a bunch of just like middle school friends?
That's a good question. So I'll answer that. Two things. Three things. First off, I'll say I don't believe, and I tweeted this after my tweet, I was in no way saying, and I've never met Phil Jackson, but I don't believe he's a racist. That's not what it was about. It was about him being a part of a system that marginalizes young people, specifically African Americans, and he sits on top of that system, and he's been a part of it for a while. To your question, was it about a specific night? Yes. I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't there. I don't travel with the Miami. When LeBron played Miami, I didn't travel with the Heat, so I wasn't in and around there. But it was about a day, and in fact, he had the story wrong. I don't know where he got the story from. I assume Pat Riley or somebody, because he kind of referenced Pat Riley as though he quoted him as though he spoke to him. That was because I did my research. I said, well, let me find out what exactly happened that night, even though my comment had nothing to do with this specific event that night. Right. But LeBron asked to stay over so they could have Thanksgiving at his house the next day. The other option was fly to Toronto and have Thanksgiving in a ballroom at a hotel. Those are the two options. We could stay here and go to Toronto the next day because we don't play till the day after that, or we can go to Toronto and wake up tomorrow on Thanksgiving, have Thanksgiving in a ballroom. And I think they ended up staying and everyone had Thanksgiving at LeBron's house, and it was great. I wasn't even there.
When you say he sits atop the system, are you referring to the triangle?
That nobody wants to play in.
That nobody wants to play in.
I'm joking, but
I don't even think Hornacek wants to coach it, right?
No, apparently not.
I think Hornacek, did Hornacek come out and say he doesn't even want to coach that system?
He's being diplomatic, but he's basically talking about all the things he's going to weave in. It's like that scene in the Jack Nicholson movie where he tries to get toast, and they don't have any, so he orders a tuna sandwich and says, hold the tuna, hold the tomato, hold the cheese.
Exactly.
I think it's basically that. But to your point, like I'm joking about the triangle, but it is emblematic of this sense of things being potentially an antiquated point of view. I would like to think, as you're saying, this isn't from a point of being a racist, but if you talk about it being representative of an institution that supports certain things that go down that path, it's a slippery slope. So
Well, we have to stop making racism just a Yosemite Sam like Django
Exactly.
racism. Like, I'm not racist because I don't have a big mustache and I'm not a Klansman and I'm not lynching people.
Right.
Racism matters when it's actually an imposition of power or influence over something that actually has an impact on somebody's life. And in this case, what we've normalized the thing that those are professionals. That's a professional hairstyle.
You can't do
That's
that.
an unprofessional hairstyle.
Yes.
And I've said this before. Notice how all the unprofessional hairstyles are essentially hairstyles that white people can't wear.
Yes.
Cornrows, dreadlocks, braids,
Afros.
twists, all those things that they can't do, it becomes unprofessional. That's not a coincidence. So just normalizing that what we dehumanize black people that are victims of police violence, whatever. Oh, well, they smoked weed one time or whatever. These things to kind of reduce you. So if I'm walking, and this applies to other forms of entertainment business, when you build out your team. When we had LeBron in here, we talked about this team that you guys have built, and it was everybody sees LeBron as this big gold rush when he comes into the league. Everybody wants to handle his money and be his attorney and handle his contracts. And when he lets his homies come in and hires his guys to be his manager, to handle this, to handle that, they're cut out. Whoa, that's my spot. That's where I'm supposed to be. And he's saying, no, we're gonna do it unorthodox. Why should I follow those rules? So I think that in order to just it's not just passive, that's taught. So you guys showing up, handling business, and clearly have proven that you can handle business. He's been in the league 14 years.
Yep.
So I think that we have to. It's important that you did respond. It didn't just let it. Oh, it's just language. It's not some big deal. Language does matter, and you can passively, kind of villainize people just for being young, black, dressing a certain way. And that's not fair. And I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, can I quickly say to you that I wanted to ask if you saw afterwards Stan Van Gundy, just interesting because the Van Gundy family obviously is a connection to the Knicks.
Yeah, I queued that up too.
He said, I understand why it's offensive. I've never used that word publicly with anybody, but I have used it in just talking to people I know and things like that. It has never been in conjunction with a white player. So I think at a time where you're going to call out other people and attitudes, you need to be willing to look in the mirror and call yourself out.
Well,
Interesting addendum.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that he brought that up. He really let's self-reflect. Let's take a moment and say, you know what? I've used that term, but I don't think I've ever used that for a white guy.
That's interesting. I did not see Stan say that.
Right.
And to Jesse's point, it's my point about the system is more or less like, oh, it's okay. Like when we first started, everyone's like, oh, his friend can't be his manager. His friends can't be his business partner. But like, if Steve Jobs and Woz went to business together, like is that different? Why can they do it?
Yep.
Why can they build Apple?
That actually makes it a wonderful story because they came up together and look at this. Like that is the American dream.
Yeah. So, but when we first started, and honestly, when we first started, people being like, "Oh, this isn't going to work. This is terrible. LeBron's making a huge mistake." I mean, they went far. People, some of the stories are like, he's going to be broke in 2 years.
Yep, I remember that.
I remember seeing this, yeah.
Listen, I mean, for them to doubt us, we were young guys who had never done this, fine. But like 14 years later.
Yeah, I know.
In 2016, with the world completely changed, like, Evan Spiegel's 24 and he builds, or whatever he is, 25 and he builds Snapchat, going to be one of the biggest IPOs in the country. Like, things are a lot different now, and you still feel that same way when you use that same word. And that word does have meaning, and he put a meaning on it, what it means to him. It can mean something different to you, it can mean something different to you, but when he said it, my opinion was how it felt and what it meant to me, and he had already defined it. So that's what upset me.
That's an important point that you contextualize it with the way he had defined it in the past. I think also we have to remember that we're not talking about AAU players.
No.
We're not talking about high school players. We're talking about adults.
Yes.
Like adults that have businesses that are providers for a whole swath of folks that have to make business decisions and successfully do and have a proven track record. We're not boys.
Absolutely. We're not boys. We're not fetching cars. And I think, for Phil, it was like, he's not racist, but he's not dumb. So he can't hide behind like, oh, I didn't know that word. No. You knew you were out to marginalize that group of people you were speaking about when you spoke about them that way and when you spoke about them in 2004. So he can't hide behind, Not that he is, because I haven't heard from him. I have not spoken
I haven't
to
either.
him.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Mav. He's notorious for doing like public power moves, right? Like talking about his own players that he wants to check instead of giving him a talk in the locker room, or maybe in addition to. I wasn't in the locker room, but he'll make comments about his players that are like to get under their skin. What is there an ulterior motive here that you can read into? Do you know why this? Carmelo commented saying, "I don't even know why he's talking about LeBron in November."
Yeah, I think Carmelo's point is right. I don't understand why he even told that story, but at the point I read it, I didn't give a shit about that. I'm like, I looked past that. Like, why is he talking about LeBron when Carmelo said that? I said, yeah, Carmelo's got a good point. But I just went right to, he's a part of a thing that's going to marginalize us, me, young people, and I'm not just going to let that go. I can't. Well, I can't. If I did that, if I just let that go, I felt like everything I had done in my career to that moment was useless. Like the reason I can say that to Phil and say you're not going to marginalize us is because the accomplishments that we have. Yeah. Like if we didn't have those, it'd be hard for me to stand up to a guy like Phil. So I had to do it. Otherwise, everything I've done in my career would have been useless.
These are the same, this passive kind of casual reflexive language is the same as being like, oh, those guys look scary. This is what got Trayvon killed. If we're gonna go down the line of connectivity, right? It's like he's wearing a hood. Then we had to talk about whether black people are allowed to utilize a function on their sweatshirt, as if Trayvon invented the hood on a sweatshirt, sewed it on, and then insidiously like put it on at night. Like this is the college white boy uniform, the hooded sweatshirt. Like so, it's that same kind of thing. He's just saying it's a group of guys. But I think my biggest takeaway is are two things. He made a point. The actual quote is, "You can't hold up the whole team because you and your mom and your posse want to spend an extra night in Cleveland." So everything about that is hyper casual, relaxed, not business oriented, and therefore possibly recreational. It's all recreational. You and your mom, right? Not you and your manager, not you and your agent, not you and your whatever, want to spend an extra. It's just it's very deliberately, and sometimes we tell stories and we leave out particular details to get your mom to let you go out.
Of course,
tonight. You don't say you're going out with. I don't say I'm going out with Ben because she's like, Ben's fucking crazy.
Exactly.
I say I'm going out with,
which is true,
right?
Which is true. Ben is crazy at night.
So that's our producer Ben we're talking about.
Crazy at night, right?
But also the question is, why is this not a heartwarming story? Why is it not? And then he rounded up the team, and they all went to Thanksgiving. He hosted Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. The story, the actual story is way more interesting and valuable. And the other most valuable thing I think comes out of this is Stan Van Gundy's perspective. I think that's really helpful to say that when and when all that came out, I had to ask myself, had I ever used that word for a white player? The answer is no. So I think look, you have to be aware of the language. You have to be aware of the language, and you have to be aware a little bit of your own biases if you're going to overcome them.
So honestly, that makes me feel great. That's why I did it. To hear Stan Van Gundy now say he's got to recalibrate his language and how he looks at people that are like myself.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel good about that. I feel great. That's the win in this for me.
You can be a well-meaning coach and just realize, okay. I've got to be fair. You gotta inject fairness into this. So cool.
Well, also, Jesse, to a point you've made publicly earlier, it's not the onus of changing the dialogue isn't on the people who are being victimized by it. It has to be on the people who are being the aggressors with it. I mean,
I wish somebody had said that in a famous speech.
I'm just taking your words. But so I think and when we had Arian Foster on to talk about taking a knee, and this notion of wouldn't it be great if there were more white allies in this? Like, wouldn't it be great if a white player took a knee?
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, it's the NBA where it's like Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, all these amazingly intelligent coaches weighing in on how outraged they are by the current climate. That I find inspiring. And Mav, it is cool that your comments moved a dialogue ahead.
That's the goal.
That's what it is.
Start a conversation.
We have to, that's what's happening now. I think just across generations, just across the country, as people are realizing, like, okay, we don't have to just be like passive bystanders to our own neglect and disenfranchisement. Just push back a little bit. Say, you know what? Didn't like that.
Yes.
Nah, I didn't like that. It's not okay. Yes. That's all. You don't have to have the master plan, but you say that that's not fair.
And to drive thought-provoking conversation. Yep. So now Stan, using his quote, he's thinking about it, and now he's like talking about like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like Stan isn't racist. Stan Van Gundy isn't racist, but he's like, whoa, wait a minute. When I said that, I was insinuating that, so I shouldn't say that anymore. I need to think about that. That was actually the goal. Now, honestly, when I first read it, I was just furious and angry.
Yeah.
And then when I thought about it, I'm like, the goal is I want to make this a conversation and people to talk about it. And because, I feel like I can, because of all the accomplishments I could do this. I could do this. Otherwise, everything I've done is useless.
There is often room for redemption. Because what Stan is saying is, I did exactly what Phil did.
Yes.
So we're out here judging Phil, but Phil hasn't completed this narrative, right? He said one thing, and we haven't heard from him since, as far as I know.
He did a tweet that was really weird.
A retweet, right?
A retweet, yeah. Some guy who works for him, I guess, runs
Clarence Gaines,
who runs an organization called the Posse Organization.
Oh, what?
Tweeted like the Posse Organization has done some great work, and I'm sure they have done fantastic work, and Phil retweeted it.
What the fuck? So he's trolling the topic?
He doubled down, I guess. I mean,
he went out and found something that uses the word positively to act like he was paying a compliment or somehow not. That's laziness.
Which is, yes. I read an article
after it happened, I went on eBay and I bought 10 copies of the original theatrical poster of Mario Van Peebles' 1993 film.
Yeah.
Posse.
Well, even better, I was reading, there was an article about this subject in Time, and there was I think they interviewed Harry Edwards, they interviewed a couple other professors, and they were saying that one of them said, there's a feminist group called Bitch Media, which does great work for women, but you can't walk around calling women bitches.
Well, exactly. That's not how any of this works.